Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makpoor with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at the developing situation, in particular, of course, the way that Pakistan is presenting facts and credible evidence based on Indian involvement in Pakistan, particularly with regards to terrorist activities in Balochistan, most recently in Khuzdar. And this is, of course, something very important in the way that innocent children were targeted and how so many people have lost their lives and many others, of course, have been injured. And this is not the first time that we've seen such terror activities sponsored by India happening in Pakistan. And we saw that the DG ISPR in a press conference has also clarified with evidence that the initial reports are pointing towards the ways and the patterns in which Indian-sponsored terrorism has occurred previously as well, clarifying that this is nothing to do with Baloch identity, but in fact the BLA is acting as Indian proxies in Pakistan and have been supported by the elements coming in from India. And this is extremely important given, of course, the baseless allegations that India has put forward on Pakistan without any evidence in the aftermath of the Pahalgam incident that Pakistan had condemned and is still asking for an independent and neutral probe into, while we do not hear any such comments coming in from the Indian side regarding the evidence-based claims that Pakistan is making. And this, of course, is a problem for the entire region and the international community in the ways that these terror networks exist and how the state is in fact involved in sponsoring them forward. And this is, of course, extremely important in taking a look at the way that this geopolitical stance of both the countries exists, the way this bilateral tensions exist, particularly, of course, focused on the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And while, of course, we have the ceasefire after the Indian aggression and Pakistan's befitting response, what remains to be seen, however, is the impact that creates and the way that we're going to put the people responsible to task, and that we move forward in the credible ways that Pakistan has shown responsibility and restraint, and see the effect of that coming in terms of our bilateral and multilateral relations, and of course accountability with regards to violations of international norms and traditions, and also the UN Security Council resolution. So we're going to be taking a look at that, and of course the ways in which we saw this development take place most recently, and of course in the ways that Pakistan is putting forward true facts with evidence as to with the ways that India has been involved in terror activities in the country. But what can be done about it, because this is not the first time that Pakistan is even putting forward these evidences, and the international community is, of course, cognizant of what has happened. So whether or not there will be a difference this time around in terms of holding India accountable, of course, remains to be seen. And we'll be taking a closer look at what Pakistan's approach is going to be and the likely response that is to follow. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by Senior Farooq Patafi and Raja Faisal, and we've also been joined online by Ambassador Retired Dr. Jameel Khan. Thank you very much, Dr. Jameel, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Before we move on with further discussions in the show, though, we're also going to take a look at some of the videos and interviews that have been shown by the DG ISPR in his press conference as well of the families of the victims of the Khuzdar terrorist attack.
तो पैरों तलों से ज़मीन निकल गई थी कि वो हमारा जवान बेटा था, वो हमारे घर का करता धरता था। तो हमें तो ऐसे हो गया कि जैसे हमारी दुनिया ही उजड़ गई है। हमने हमारा जवान भाई, कुंवारा भाई कब्र में उतारा है। हम जानते हैं या हमारा अल्लाह जानता है कि हमारे दिल में कितनी तकलीफ है। मैं गरीब ही है, अपना बेटा पाले, अपनी रोजी वास्ते नहीं किया, जिगर फटा दिते ना मेरे सीने गोली मारी ने किया होता जोर माई किया कसूर आई। काम के सिलसिले में बलूचिस्तान गए थे, उसी फ्रूट लेके आ रहे थे और वो राह में शहीद किए गए। मैंने उसको बड़े लाड और प्यार से पाला था, उन्होंने सालों ने भी जुल्म कर दिया मेरे बच्चे के साथ। तो पाकिस्तान है दहशतगर्दी पिलाई करन जेरे रले करे ना मार कर सारे द मजदूर ना पुत्र यारा दिया भाइयों छोड़ के मजदूरी रहती तो चला गए सुते आया को ना मारे आके कितने मजदूरी कितने गया सारे छोटे छोटे बाल रोजी बसते गए तो कमावन बसते और रोजी करण बसते गए अपनी मौत देके।
You heard the families of the victims of terrorist activities in Balochistan, and this is, of course, very important in terms of how people's lives are affected by these terror activities, and the bereaved families who are still suffering the hands of these terrorists, and of course being completely innocent in this fight and being targeted by these terrorist organizations, and of course supported by India, something that definitely needs accountability, consequence and action. And Farooq, I want your take on this before we move further.
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think that you have seen the videos, you have heard the voices of people who are basically salt of the earth, honest, hard-working, poor people. What kind of cowards kill innocent people just who are just there to earn a living? And this is the kind of hate that is celebrated by India. And one must point out today, in today's protester, we also saw the pictures of the kids who were killed by the martyrs, actually, who were killed by the cowardly terrorists, and also the pictures of kids who have been badly mauled by that terrorist attack. This is what your enemy is about. They don't just hate your country, they just don't hate your institutions, they hate your kids. And this kind of brutality, even while we were condemning the Pahalgam incident, one should remind everybody that terrorists who actually killed people at Pahalgam did not attack women or children. Here these monsters know no boundary, no limit. This kind of brutality, and then that also is sponsored by India, celebrated by India's so-called intellectuals, so-called military experts, so-called anchors and analysts. This is shameful conduct, and it continues unabated. I think that it is about time that the world wakes up to this tragedy and look these monsters for whatever they are.
Absolutely. Faisal, your perspective on this?
Yes, and obviously majority of the people who are laying their lives and who are being the victims of these monsters, of course, they are the ones who search for living in Balochistan, and they are labor class, they are few of them, they are barbers, and they get killed in there just because of one reason, because the BLA and BLF, it is being funded by India, and of course they are making sure that anyone from outside Balochistan, as soon as gets into Balochistan, they want to create a terror against him, they want to create a terror for whole Pakistan, and this is their investment, and that's how they are playing. Farooq has rightly pointed out that at least, I mean, we never hailed Pahalgam attack, but at least there was some sanity, because the kind of information we are receiving from Pahalgam attack, at least they had asked people whether there was someone who was, of course, associated with the intelligence agencies of India or police agencies of security agencies. They were the victims, and even their kids and women, they were spared by them. They were monsters equal, but when it comes to some sanity, they had that. But these ones, I am pretty much sure India makes sure that they tell them that kill the kids and women as well equally, and this is their, of course, motive, and motive is all clear. They just want to create terror in Balochistan, and they keep on investing BLA, BLF just to hit Pakistan.
Right. Ambassador Saab, I want your perspective on this too, and add to that with reference to, of course, the ways that we saw the DG ISPR also put forward evidence with regards to what initial reports suggest and what we have seen in the past of Indian involvement in state-sponsored terrorism. And we know that that has happened with BLA, particularly in Balochistan and in other parts of the country as well. But I want your take in terms of the way that we need to provide justice to the people who are still suffering, who are, of course, still bereaving the loss of their loved ones, and to make sure that their hearts can be put to rest by bringing those that are responsible to task.
Well, justice, so far as the kinetic actions are concerned, so far as the law enforcing agencies are concerned, it's those terrorists are met with the justice. You know, they are neutralized. As a matter of fact, there are more than 1,120 or 30 operations which has been done so far, and scores of terrorists have been killed. But is it sufficient? My answer is no, because the complete comprehensive integrated approach is required, which requires our international support as well. Today we had a very good breakthrough yesterday night in Pakistan, and day in US. One Security Council passed a resolution condemning it and asking for the justice and asking for the entire world community to collaborate and cooperate with Pakistan in bringing the culprits to justice. So in that context, the evidence what has been presented today with the digital and the forensic trail of all the evidences which has been produced by DG ISPR. I think that if presented at all forum in multi-dimensional manner and in multi-layered manner through the diplomatic channels and through the other channels, that could really serve a lot of purpose, because even at the face of it, it's so convincing. If one just looks at those evidences and coupled with the other evidences during the Pahalgam and during after the Pahalgam incident and the 4 days war, all those the evidences, they are the testimony that Pakistan, whatever they are presenting with its evidence and the forensic evidence. This particular operation, the kind of embarrassment which India had during this 4 days war, now they are trying to direct all their energies towards the proxy war. And this proxy war, as we all know, it's part of their hybrid war which they have directed, and we have sufficient proofs about it, including Kulbhushan, who is a trophy with us, and which we can, and who has made the confession. We can, if inquiry is ordered under Article 34 of the United Nations Security Council, which I think ultimately, if we keep pursuing the way we are pursuing, and if the world community, the way they have passed a resolution in the Security Council, and then, of course, the steps has to be further augmented in it to draw the attention of the Security Council for Article 34. As I said, that would at least form a commission of inquiry, and that could really unveil all these evidence what we are presenting through the press, and at that time that would have its value. And because if these evidence are really presented to the Security Council in a structured and legal framework, then the Security Council would obviously consider it, and there won't be any choice left with the members of the Security Council to pass a resolution under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. So that's how the sequencing could be done, and I am sure the Foreign Office and those who are dealing with it, they might have really planned it accordingly. I have not discussed this particular aspect of it. But then the funding kind of a trail, funding trail, what we have, and we have already, in fact, we have started submitting all these evidences starting from 2019. Once we had submitted with all the evidences which we had at that time, and now there are much more.
Right. We'll speak once again. I believe there's some technical issue when connecting with you, but Faisal, Ambassador Sab is making a valid point in terms of course, the way that this needs to be put forward and it needs to be addressed. And while, of course, Pakistan is fighting this on the home front, there is also a need for the recognition of the fact that we are suffering at the hands of another state that is sponsoring these activities. And that is not just, of course, Pakistan's problem, but it is the region's problem or the international community's problem as well. But how do we make that into their problem in practical terms, that they're able to address this issue and hold India accountable?
Yes, and obviously, when we talk about Pakistan and India, the conflict, the bone of contention between both of them is still Kashmir. And whatever is obviously happening, if India is investing on the western front of Pakistan, there's only one reason behind it, and they just want Pakistan's security forces to get busy elsewhere, because even they were having more than 900,000 troops stationed in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Still, situation is not out of the danger for them. Reason being, people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir want the liberation, want to get freedom from the Indians, and they want to join Pakistan. And even DG ISPR, Lieutenant General Ahmad Sharif, he has rightly pointed out that the day Kashmir would be resolved between Pakistan and India, of course, all of the other problems of Pakistan, they will be automatically resolved as well. The only reason India keeps on investing money on BLA, BLF, TTP, ISIS Khorasan, all of them, is the only reason behind it is that they just want Pakistan security forces to keep themselves free on the Western Front, and they get a favorable situation in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to, of course, put more pressure on the people to, be more rogue on them, and that is the only reason, because we know that the defensive offense, the kind of ideology they have always propagated about, especially people like NSA of India, Ajit Doval, he kept on mentioning everywhere that of course it is to engage Pakistan and keep Pakistan busy. Whatever is happening in Balochistan, BLA, BLF, it has nothing to do with the rights, nothing to do with the, they seeking freedom or anything like that. It is entirely a nuisance which they have created, and only to, of course, show to the world that rather than Kashmir be looked after, there is another aspect of Pakistan that needs looking after, and they want to equate Balochistan with Kashmir. I think if Pakistan can take all of the dossiers and can represent itself in a better way in United Nations Security Council, and can garner more support, as we are seeing that Pakistan is being supported, and if Pakistan can garner more support in terms of India's involvement in terrorism in Pakistan, then I'm pretty much sure once that is highlighted, then as we are seeing that the world is, of course, highlighting again and again that Kashmir is pivotal, Kashmir needs to be resolved. The day, the moment Kashmir will be resolved, we will all see that all of these minnows and rats of BLA and BLF and TTP and ISIS Khorasan, they won't be able to sustain at all, and their presence would simply, they'll vanish.
Right. And Farooq, I want your take on this too, in terms of when we take a look at the ways that we're approaching this to the international community. We also heard a recent interview of the permanent representative of Pakistan to the United Nations, who's talked about how at the heart of the issue is the occupied valley. But he's also mentioned that Pakistan, of course, has been open to dialogue always, and perhaps that is a possibility with third-party mediation. But do you think that while we see these terror activities happening in Pakistan and Indian involvement and sponsorship with regards to them, how can we approach at the same time the issues with regards to what is there in terms of our bilateral relationship with such a country?
Thank you very much once again, Sana. Let me start by actually acknowledging that the UNSC and the US and other allies of Pakistan have condemned this dastardly act of violence and terror against innocent children and Khuzdar. And I think that that is an important point to make, because their influence is also important. They are seeing everything. That is very important, right? Before I actually come to the issue of Kashmir, I wanted to engage with what Faisal was saying regarding DO, or defensive offense. That is a strategy that was defined by India's National Security Advisor in 2014. Look, I don't have any visibility on his intentions. He might actually be only vocalizing or articulating any policy that he was actually making at the point. But the fact is that it is not that simple. India might have actually tried to engage Pakistan on Western Front or Pakistan South, but the truth is that India's own society has been undergoing a lot of transformation, and that is because Manoism is something that gives Indians or Indian elite this right to hate people just on the basis of their genetic makeup. So their anger has turned into this perpetual hatred, where they cannot tell human beings apart, they cannot tell grown-ups and combatants from non-combatant innocent children. I've heard on their channels, Sana, that they refer to us as snakes, and they then justify saying that children of snakes are also snakes, and therefore you can kill them. With that kind of hate, with that, and by the way, this is not an exaggeration. Their channels, look at these kids who have actually gone through hell. Their visuals keep on flashing on your screen. What kind of monsters would want these children to suffer, right? To attack these people. So with that kind of mentality taking over India, now it becomes very difficult to actually pretend that India is a rational actor. The actions, particularly on the night of 6th, you saw the way they were celebrating the murder, broad day murder of women and children who were killed by their missiles, and they keep on celebrating that. How are you going to engage with that kind of hate? This is the question. I respect what DG ISPR was saying regarding resolution of Kashmir, but I think that it is about time we start talking to the world about the kind of hate that is there. Don't ask only us, Sana. Ask people around the world. Wherever Indians go, they are actually, especially their financial elites, they take with them their racism and casteism. In Seattle, there was a law to protect, lower caste of Hinduism, and there all Indian elites immediately started calling it anti-Hindu law. That you don't tell us how to treat our Dalits, you don't tell us how to treat our Shudras. With that kind of mentality, Sana, it becomes very difficult to engage with someone like India at this moment. What we need to do is keep on telling our story to the world. Early Ambassador Saab was referring to a dossier that was published and presented in 2019. And in that dossier, you will see that we brought receipts. There was a particular financial financial transfer from Bank of the Punjab to TTP heads and BLA heads, right? And their accounts in Afghanistan or elsewhere. And then you see one thing that during that time, FinCEN report actually leaks that emerged that showed that India had indulged in the transfer of $1 billion worth of or more worth of dark money to such causes all over the world. Among them, Bank of the Punjab was also highlighted. So India is, make no mistake, a sponsor, a major sponsor of terrorism, a major sponsor of hate, and also all these hard right extremists who are popping up in the West right now. India has played a role in mainstreaming racism in those countries also, because in their point of view, and somehow Israelis don't understand it, these are people who actually eulogize and lionize Hitler. They lionize that kind of mentality of Nazis. So are they going to actually let up? I don't think so.
Absolutely. Ambassador Saab, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Great. Ambassador Saab, I also want your take on this, because when we take a look at what is being said in terms of what is going on both inside the occupied valley and within India against Muslims, and in the ways that we know, the way that the BJP-led government is putting forward this Hindutva ideology and of course violating UN Security Council resolutions, not just in 2019, but even before that, there is of course a need to address the core issue at the heart of all of this when it comes to India and Pakistan. And while of course we are at the point of ceasefire after the most recent Indian aggression, but in terms of the ways that we need to be able to look at the root cause is very, very important, as our ambassador to the UN was also saying in a recent interview. So I want your take on how will that actually happen without there being any dialogue with India? And we keep on hearing, of course, these statements coming in from India about this being between India and Pakistan, but then, of course, no real effort in terms of sitting on the table. And Pakistan, of course, is open to it. But what do we do if the other party does not come to talk to at the table?
No, but the situation is completely changed after this 4 days war which we had. 10th was the day, which was a culminating day in which the Pakistan had shown what it has in terms of its military power, even while they have less number of equipment with them as compared to, and my reference is there's about more than 630 aircraft India has and Pakistan has 300 and something. But in all, even today, the DG ISI, he mentioned that those 1.3 million force, they saw what result Pakistan has. Coming on the Kashmir, that is the oldest dispute agenda on the Security Council agenda. And there are about 17 Security Council resolutions that have already been passed. This time along, after this, what Pakistan has presented in a very transparent manner, and what now world more than ever has realized that where it could have taken the world, if it had further escalated. And Pakistan had already announced that, and even the world knew that if there's a full spectrum war, then what are going to be the consequences? Now, with that in mind, and the kind of mediation and the international efforts that it should not escalate, so that gives us the idea, and that gives us the hope that this agenda point would now again resurface in front of the Security Council. And this time, if any resolution is passed under Chapter 7, because so far no resolution has been passed under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. It's only all the 17 resolutions which I was referring to, starting from resolution number 47, passed in 1948, that they all have been passed under Chapter 6, and which means that those are not implementing tools are not there in those resolutions. But if it's Chapter 7, then of course the implementing tools. Now, what Pakistan has done, why I say that now it has been resurfaced and now it has really the world community must have realized, and we can see the vibes which we are getting from some of the countries that they are concerned about it. And the concern, as I said, that the war had escalated, it had the consequences, and no one knew what kinds of consequences could have it gone. So therefore, now we'll have a more favorable environment in Security Council, because the solution lies with the Security Council, good, bad, or worse. Whether they are so far they have not been able to do that, because Security Council, as you know, is a totally politicized forum, because there are countries they veto it. There are countries they have their own geopolitical interest, and therefore they veto it. I would refer to United States, that they've been vetoing some of very important resolutions related to Kashmir in past. But now, this time, because no one less than the most powerful president of the most powerful country, he himself is taking interest. So, and of course, along with the other UN members and the Security Council members. So this time along, if the resolution is brought, and I'm sure Pakistan must be considering, any country can bring the resolution. There is there are certain steps which are to be followed. We know what steps are followed, and we have very proficient permanent representative there, Asim Iftikhar, our ambassador Asim Iftikhar, and I'm sure we can always create an environment where we present to the Security Council all this evidence, what we are discussing and what we've been discussing, all these evidence which through the military diplomacy our DG ISPR is presenting in front of the media, in front of the camera. Now, it has to be consolidated with cross-reference to the international evidence which Canada has, which US has, then which UK has in terms of the transnational terrorism which India has been doing. The first time the world has witnessed that diplomacy has been weaponized. You know, the diplomats, they were in war in Canada, and that evidence has been presented by no one less than the Prime Minister of Canada at the floor of the House. So that has its value, 5 eyes. So all these points, if we encapsulate all these points, you know, and we presented to the Security Council once the resolution is tabled, I think this time you'll find that the members, the council members, would definitely at least discuss it. You know, it won't be vetoed, in my view, even before it is brought to the agenda. And these evidence, and now that Fitnatul Hindustan, very recent, this Khosdar matter where the innocent kids have been killed by the terrorists, and then they're celebrating it in India, and they're just glamorizing it in their media and all those places. So the people do have the members, the countries of the Security Council, they do have now at least that the feeling of discussing this matter. So to my mind, now this Bilawal Bhutto has been sent. Good idea, and now I think with their efforts, and once our ambassadors in those respective countries where Bilawal Bhutto is going to, and his team and his delegation is going to visit, I'm sure they are going to cover all aspects of it, the public diplomacy, the traditional diplomacy, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would cater for the legal diplomacy with the collaboration and cooperation of our Attorney General and the Law Division, because that is where we sometimes lack our kind of a technical feed to the.
Definitely, those are areas that we really need to be very strong when we take this to the international community. Thank you very much, Dr. Jameel, for joining us and sharing your views. Faisal, I want your take on, while we of course follow legal channels and the approaches that we need, there's of course also a need in terms of putting forward that narrative and making the international community, in terms of the people of the world, to understand what is going on both in the occupied valley and in Pakistan. How are we doing on that front?
Yes, sir. Obviously, there are different ways to do it. First of all, if we talk about the international media, of course, international media is doing it, and they are even trying to, get an access to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, which they are always denied. And India is only, allowing their own Shrivastava group to get into Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and report from there. When it comes to Pakistan, of course, Pakistan is highlighting this issue, highlighting the plight of the people of Kashmir, highlighting the plight of Muslims overall in India, because we have time and again highlighted that the ideology under which India is being run, today's India is being run, of course, it is Hindutva ideology, and it is anti-Muslim, anti-Kashmir and anti-Pakistan. And of course, time and again, our ambassadors throughout the world, they have highlighted it. We have created the dossiers and we have shown it to the world. But I think so far we have been seeing a tendency of the Western countries that they were prioritizing their economic ties and economic endeavors more than the humanity. And that is why we have been seeing that India was being facilitated, and India felt like it can do anything, anywhere, and nobody would say anything about it. But of course, since a couple of years, this notion has changed. Reason being, the kind of activities India's premier intelligence agency RAW was involved in the Western countries, and then in Pakistan as well, and then of course investing, financing the terrorism and facilitating it in Pakistan. Of course, one by one it is getting busted, and so far of course we can see that notion is changing now. And once it has changed completely, we will be seeing that the powerful countries of the West they will be taking all of this into account.
Right.
But overall, one sentence which I have highlighted in recent times is that I think the kind of world order we have been seeing after Second World War, these are sort of last breaths of that world order. And in that world order, of course, countries, they were giving preferences to their endeavors rather than political or economic endeavors rather than humanity. I think this must change. This world desperately requires a new world order, and that world order should be based upon reality, should be based upon truth, should be based upon equality, and should be based upon humanity.
Right. And Farooq, I want your take on whether or not the collective voice of the people of the world can actually make a difference in terms of the decision makers.
Right, Sana. Once again, let me actually remind you, if you go to any Indian website right now, any news website, number one story there must be about President Donald Trump, whose policy regarding Harvard University was blocked by Indian court, American court, right? Why would that be? Because these are petty, mean people. They target you if you actually do something that they don't like. Because President Trump actually announced a ceasefire, they have made him a target, and it will continue. These are the same Visigoths who actually celebrated when Moody's actually downgraded America's ratings. So with that kind of meanness in the system, you have to realize what kind of elements you are dealing with. If you look at their influence in international media, they have installed their people to have a chilling effect on media's reportage on these developments. In 2019, I remember there was one dossier on Kashmir only. In that dossier, Sana, we had given evidence of two things. One, use of chemical weapons by Indian forces on Kashmiris, right? And the world did not see because the world was not allowed to see because of the media manipulation. Then they, at that time, if you remember, there were pellet gun wounds. Because of that, kids actually got blinded. But again, that was only moderately reported in the Western press. So India keeps on doing it. They did it just now. When there was an attack on Udhampur, they showed images in New York Times. They showed images, satellite images of our air bases immediately after the attack. But they waited for 2 days to actually take the aerial or satellite picture of Udhampur air base so that Indian Air Force can repair it. With that kind of manipulation, we'll have to keep on trying, Sana. But I tell you, the moment has come. They have annoyed everybody under the sun. Last time when, Article 370 was an issue, it was France which was actually ready to veto on their behalf. Now even their intelligence agencies are tired of these bullies, these monsters, these hate-crazed Visigoths. Right. So you have to realize that Pakistan has the golden moment to keep on pushing.
Right. Thank you, Farooq, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.